Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on today. We have a shootout between affordably priced, roughly 39 to 40 millimeter, no date, automatic winding, strap clad sports watches. It's Tudor versus Oris versus starts now. Let's start with the watch that is more familiar. Not because it's any older as a model, both of these came out in 2021, but because the Tudor Black Bay has now been with us for 10 years. Launched in 2012, it gained the Black Bay 58 variant, thinner, more compact overall, in 2018. Now, that has been one of the favorites among Black Bay collectors and Tudor fans. This watch, however, was out of left field. Made of sterling silver with a taupe dial and bezel, this is perhaps the least vintage inspired of any Black Bay reference of its first decade. The timepiece in sterling silver has a wonderful muted matte appearance and a tendency to patina over time, a feature it has in common with the bronze Oris. The timepiece measures 39 millimeters in diameter, 12.6 millimeters thick, 13.9 if we're going to include the strap, so it adds a little bit of thickness there. From lug tip to lug tip, these two are very close together. This is 47.7, and there is a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now we'll zoom out a little bit. The fit of the Black Bay 58 hasn't changed from other models, only the colors have varied. The watch is still reasonably compact, but it is a little bit heftier than some of the previous references in steel. Now the timepiece on the wrist, of course, in sterling silver, has a lovely matte tone to it. Nothing on this watch glistens or gleams in bright finish, with the exception of the crystal itself. On the wrist, super compatible. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference. This watch is narrow across the wrist and suitable for a wrist as small as 13 centimeters circumference. And it's suitable for a tight sleeve or dress cuff as it slides relatively easily underneath my shirt sleeve right here on a conventional strap, and it's also offered on a leather strap. You don't have this backing component, and the watch is even thinner and sits even lower. Now, taking a quick look, you can see that we have a textile strap in a color that nicely matches the taupe of the bezel and the dial. We have this little contrasting stripe through the center, and then we have hardware in matching sterling silver. You can see right here strap minders, satin finished, and then we have a sort of a Clevis style buckle that features the Tudor Shield logo cut into it, and it too is made of sterling silver. Now roll into the case. You can see this case does feature a display case back, but there's not much to see. Here's the movement, fairly industrial in execution. MT5400 may be a technically impressive manufacturer caliber, or at least made by Kinesi, exclusive caliber for Tudor, also borrowed in modified form by Breitling. Nevertheless, it is not a handsome looking movement. Okay, the timepiece itself is gorgeous. You don't need to see the movement. Fortunately, with this strap, you can't. You can see it with the leather strap, not with this one. The dial is taupe with a chapter ring. It has applique hour indices. The hands at center are evocative of the snowflake hands as seen on Tudor subs from the late 60s through the mid 70s. The chapter ring, the no-guard profile, the big crown, all of this is reminiscent of Tudor and Rolex Submariner watches from the 1950s. That is the deliberate reference that they're trying to evoke. You can see that the sapphire has a dramatically domed and cambered profile to look like a plexiglass, and we have a little bit of beveling on the edges of the lugs to remind us of a period when Rolex and Tudor subs shared cases, and they both featured hand-finished bevels. These are not hand-finished, but they are lovely and welcome. We have the Tudor Rose logo on the crown, and oddly, the later Tudor Shield logo on the dial, but that's been a characteristic feature of a Tudor Black Bays with the in-house movement for the last 6 years. They feature both logos. We have a 60-click bezel. We have a micro-knurled outer edge, which makes it really easy to grip. And I have to say that even though the knurling is barely there, it has a particularly sharp bite to it that I enjoy. We have a luminescent pearl here. We have an anodized aluminum insert that perfectly matches the taupe color of the dial. Let's do a quick lume shot. As you can see, absolutely blazing. No compromise there. In terms of specifications, the movement, caliber MT5400, was designed specifically for the Black Bay 58. So the standard MT5600 series that you'd find on a 41 or 43 millimeter Black Bay, that is 6.5 millimeters thick and 31.8 millimeters in diameter. This movement is 4.99 millimeters thick and 26 millimeters in diameter. Tudor created a bespoke movement for the Black Bay 58. It has a 70-hour power reserve, bidirectional automatic winding, hacking seconds, a full balance bridge with a free-sprung index for shock tolerance. It is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer, and of course it beats weight at 8 beats per second, pivoting on 27 joules. It is a technically accomplished, if homely, manufacture, or I should say exclusive movement, used only by Tudor and its partners. Now, jumping real quick to the Carl Brashear. This is technically the Carl Brashear 3, and the watch, launched in 2021, is a 2,000-piece limited edition. So this is the Oris Carl Brashear 401 limited edition. It is 40 millimeters in bronze. It's 13.3 millimeters thick if we just count the case. If we include the strap, which is underslung, it's 14.6 millimeters thick, and it is 47.9 millimeters lug-to-lug. Lug-to-lug, these watches are very similar. We have a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. The straps are nicely made by Erica's Originals, and the bronze hardware is hugely attractive. There is one problem, though. There are several different sizes of strap, and this one is relatively tight and constricting, meaning I can't actually put it on my wrist. I would need a different strap. The inability to open the strap entirely makes it impossible to put the strap on my wrist, and it would fit if I could get it over my hand, but I cannot. Now, of course, this watch, the third in the series of blue dial bronze case timepieces, inspired by U.S. Navy diver Carl Brashear, and it is created in conjunction with the Carl Brashear Foundation, so some of this money goes to a good cause. Now, of course, the timepiece is very similar in size, but entirely different in character, as this is a bronze-cased watch, and unlike the Tudor, not only does it have brighter color to it, but it also has differential satin finish and polish. And we have a couple of different finishes on this case. We have satin brushing on the lug hoods, we have media blasting on the bezel interior, and we have polish on the case flank as well as the flank of the bezel knurling. If you thought the Tudor had a dramatically cambered plexi-like sapphire, take a look at this one on the Carl Brashear. Now, this watch is drawn heavily from the Oris Divers 65 line, so that's where most of this design language comes from. Here, too, we have a no-guard profile for the crown, and then we have more of a rounded end to these rather tapered and more angular lugs. You can see these are a little bit taller, and these are a little bit narrower, and definitely sharper of profile. The watch includes a strap that is very nicely made. Here, too, we have textile with a contrasting center stitch. The watches really are very similar in many regards. This is the Erica's Original MN, and the timepiece features lovely bronze hardware. You just can't fully unbuckle the strap in order to put it around your wrist if it doesn't already clear your wrist. Now, as you can see, this watch too features a little bit of a blockage of the case back, but I can draw enough material and gather it so you can see the case back features the image of a vintage diving helmet and a little quote from Carl Brashear: "It's not a sin to get knocked down, it's a sin to stay down." Of course, in addition to being qualified as a U.S. Navy diver, he was an amputee above the knee, and he requalified as a diver following the amputation. So he was a resilient human being. Now, this watch is beautiful of case back, and frankly, I don't need to see the Oris Calibre 401. I've seen Calibre 400 through a display case back. It's plain, industrial, and a little bit too much like the Tudor MT for my taste. So a handsome and themed case back is actually my preference right here. Now, the timepiece includes 100 meters of water resistance, which is 100 meters less than the Tudor. This may or may not make a difference to you, but if you do plan on doing any kind of real diving, as opposed to just swimming or snorkeling, you're probably going to want 200 meters. Now, other things to like about the Oris, though, lots of color. And as you can see, the combination of the rose gold of the indices, the blue gloss of the dial, and the brown bronze of the case, it's really quite attractive. That said, you could see when we compare the two side by side that the Tudor has a distinct lume advantage The Tudor also has a much more legible constant seconds hand. I think small seconds on a dive watch is a little bit of an unforced error. If I have to be honest, I think Tudor's approach is the sounder of the two. But the Oris movement is the more technically impressive. It has a 5-day power reserve, automatic winding, hacking seconds. It's adjusted in 5 positions, and according to Oris, will run no worse than -3 5 seconds plus 5 seconds per 24 hours. So -3 plus 5. Tudor meets the COSC standard, which is -4 plus 6. It may outperform that standard, but everyone who passes gets the certification. All we know is that Oris promises accuracy beyond COSC. Oris also attests that this watch is anti-magnetic beyond 2,000 Gauss, which is really quite remarkable. 2,250 Gauss, which is probably going to be competitive with the anti-magnetism of the silicone hairspring in the Tudor. With the 5-day power reserve comes a 10-year service interval and a 10-year warranty, which is deeply impressive and sets a new standard for the industry, not just for affordable dive watches, but for watches at any price point. Remember, Patek Philippe is still just 2 years. So those are all of the features you get with the Oris. Let's talk about the advantages of each watch. Starting with the Tudor. First of all, COSC certification. While Oris promises big-time accuracy, it doesn't actually submit the watch to a third-party test, so I consider the COSC to be preferable among the two. This watch is 200 meters versus 100 meter. It may be academic for most, but luxury is about getting more. Also, the superiority of the strap and buckle. Here we have a conventional strap with a conventional pin buckle. The buckle and the minders are made of sterling silver. It fits a broad range of wrists, and it's quite attractive with the clever Tudor shield logo at the tip of the Clevis-style counterweighted buckle. So in addition to being an easier strap to adjust and suitable for a broader range of wrists, the materials objectively are just more favorable, at least to my eye. Even the textile strap seems to be a little bit thicker than the material used on the Oris. Now, in terms of which one is more distinctive, I can't tell you how many silver dive watches I've encountered. Very, very few. This might be the only sterling silver dive watch that I've encountered from any brand at any volume. The combination of the silver with the taupe dial and bezel makes this a wonderfully cool, austere look. It's different from any other diver and any other Black Bay. So in terms of distinctive appearance, this is pretty much a class by itself, whereas this is the third of the Carl Brashears. They've all got a similar blue and bronze color palette, but beyond that, since the Panerai Bronzo of 2011, the PAM 382, there have been a million different bronze watches. So from a standpoint of uniqueness, it seems to me the Tudor is truly unique, whereas this watch only has a unique reference. The basic design language has been seen many times elsewhere, and that's before we even call on the similarities with the Divers 65. What else can I say? The Tudor features a center seconds hand that I feel just makes a lot more sense on a dive watch. It's easier to view at a glance, and its motion is more evident to the eye, because out here where the loomed plot is moving, it's moving faster than the relatively shorter arm of the small seconds inside the Oris. Now, let's talk about what the Oris does better. Okay, we didn't talk about pricing, but this is $4,200 new, and it's about $3,650 used. With the Tudor, the price is $4,400 new, and pre-owned actually a little bit more, $4,950. So whether you're buying new or used, the Oris is the more accessible watch by a few $100. And indeed, the spread between these, when used, is well over $1,000. So the Oris is the better buy from a pricing standpoint. 5 days of power reserve and twin mainspring barrels, meaning not only does it have 5 days of reserve, but unlike a lot of watches with long power reserves, you don't get the wild fluctuation in timing from very fast to very slow as a single barrel uncoils. With the twin barrels, you have a very accurate and stable long-term timekeeper. Also, Tudor, your 5-year warranty last year was great. In 2021, Tudor upgraded to 5 years, matching its sister firm Rolex. Prior to that, it had been 2 years, which was just unsat. Well, Oris has reset the standard. This watch has a 10-year service interval and a 10-year warranty. Advantage Carl Brashear. I also think that the solid caseback on this watch is in better taste and shows more respect for the client Then the display case back on the Rolex, which reveals an ugly and industrial movement. It's a bit of an eyesore, and it's almost a challenge to your connoisseurship. In other words, it's as though Tudor is handing you vinegar and expecting you to react as though it's a fine wine, not knowing the difference between an ugly movement and a beautiful movement. Neither one of these movements is beautiful. Oris just spares you the sight. I'm also going to throw out the fact that this 120 click bezel feels and sounds great. Whereas this one has big chunky 60 click action, and while it feels good, it also sounds a little bit more damped. It doesn't have quite the tactile sensation, the pleasing feel, and the precision you get with the 120 click Carl Brashear. Also important to note, there's that accuracy attestation. This is a 5-position adjusted watch, and Tudor may adjust beyond the COSC. Rolex does, but we'll never know. Oris is putting a big number on this, -3 +5 for 24 hours. There's a lot to love about both of these watches. The Oris with the superior power reserve, it's more colorful, it's got a superb warranty and service interval. The Tudor, it's cool monochrome aesthetic and the uniqueness of sterling silver and taupe. But if I were to buy one of these watches, for me it would be the gorgeous, standalone, unique Tudor Black Bay 58 925. This looks unlike anything else. I don't like retro watches, and for that reason, I've never loved the Black Bay. I was always a Pelagos guy. This watch changes my opinion. It has better lume, so it looks better in the dark. It's easier to read. It has that fantastic sterling silver taupe combo, and it will patina. Both of these watches will, but sterling silver ages differently. It's also worth the premium, either pre-owned or new. And I'm happy to say it's not another bronze watch because we have too many of them. It has a strap and a buckle that are better by miles, so much more flexible and adjustable than the locked loop of the model, which is nicely made, but inflexible, that you'll find on the Oris. Guys, I am all about the Tudor, but you let me know in the description below. Are you a Tudor guy or Oris? Let me know in the description below. I'm a Tudor guy. Today, my allegiance is with the Shield.